My name is Patricia Vasquez. I teach at Bell Gardens High School, and I've been implementing the CAP curriculum, for over 10 years now. So I love the program. My kids love the program. So I'm here to advocate. Please go ahead and do this in your classroom.
And we also have another veteran CAP teacher. Actually, Eddie actually helped us pilot this in the very beginning, like almost 11, 12 years ago. Eddie, you want to quickly introduce yourself before we move on?
Sure. So good morning, everyone. So Eddie Lopez. I'm the social science TOSA at the district office. But as Gregorio mentioned, before coming to Monterey Unified, I taught at MUSD, specifically at Roosevelt High School in Boyle Heights for 12 years. And so I've worked with David and Gregorio for many, many years on CRF CAP projects, along with some other amazing projects that CRF has. And so it's great to, to be working at the district, right? Coming back to Montebello Unified, which is where I actually went to elementary, middle school, and high school. So as an alum coming back to the district, and also to know that CRF has been working with Patricia for a long time and trying to get CRF at least get our social science teachers who do service learning projects, if not familiar with CRF CAP project, to become familiar with the CAP project as a great option to engage our young scholars.
And as Eddie and Patty have mentioned, we have a long history at MUSD, really working with a lot of high school teachers. So it's really great to have them on board. But just a little about Constitutional Rights Foundation. We're a private educational nonprofit, nonpartisan. We're very keen on that. What we really specialize in is developing balanced and fact-based materials and really letting the students form their own opinions based on that balanced content. And we're very sensitive to that. And we always try to make sure that everything we produce is balanced and factual, informed by the research. So we've been around in LA for over 55 years, and we develop a variety of materials, civic and law-related materials and programs. You may have heard of the California Mock Trial Program. We have, of course, the Civic Action Project, which is our signature civic engagement program, and really the culminating result of all the experience CRF has had with community service, service learning, and what we like to refer to as policy-based civic engagement. So I'd like to start this workshop today by really providing some context as to what it is Civic Action Project is about. So I'd like to ask everybody, and if you can please respond in the chat room, and David will be monitoring it along with Patty. Just a very simple question. What is the goal of public education? As teachers, what do you think is the goal of public education? Think of what it is you're trying to graduate from your high schools and your students. Feel free, David or Patty, if you have any responses, what you think it might be. It's not a trick question. I want to point that out.
Engage citizens.
Absolutely. And I think that's the answer we were looking for. I don't know if anyone else has any other responses.
Civically engaged students, understanding how they can get involved with the community.
And learning where the levers of influence are in their community. How can they actually influence the decisions of the decision maker? So I think we agree that a primary goal is to graduate students who can function as effective citizens. But what do we mean by an effective citizen? And the way we like to describe it at or define it at is that individual has the knowledge, skills, and dispositions to do exactly what I described. Influence the decisions of the decision makers in their community to address the problems, issues, and needs that they believe are important. That is where the buy-in to the process occurs with CAP. Students often ask, and even some teachers have asked, what do we mean by civic actions? Very simply, it's all of the things that average citizens do to address problems or needs in their community. The first thing is simply identifying a particular problem, issue, or need that's really compromising the quality of life in their community. Researching, becoming informed, that's the first step. So they've already completed 2 civic actions, simply identifying something that's important, becoming informed, absolutely critical, because we want informed and engaged citizens. Communicating with peers and community partners. What do others in their community feel about the impact of their issue? They may find out that maybe they don't think it's that important, or they may find out that there are other individuals, even organizations and groups of individuals who are already dedicated to addressing that problem, issue, or need. And finally, and this is really what we want them to do, engaging policy and policymakers, and that may be simply finding out Who is the policymaker responsible for policy in their community? We've already have 4 or 5 civic actions that we've covered, and the students could almost do this from the comfort of their rooms now, especially now with the internet. They can create surveys, they can reach out, they can go on the internet and gather all of this information, because really the ideal outcome of the CAP process is that students emerge being experts on the impact of that issue in their community and what they think should be done about it. I'm going to show an example. Actually, David, if you can maybe cue up a video. We actually have an example of a project. And this is actually a student from Patricia's classroom. And as you watch this video, this is a video that the student created. He created a media product that captured his civic experience and really let people know what it was, the steps he took to address this important issue. So as all of you watch this video, I want you to look for 3 things. What was a problem, issue, or need that this particular student focused on? What are examples of discrete civic actions he completed to become informed and actually address the problem, issue, or need? And finally, what was the policy connection? Was there a policy connection? How did he engage local government to help them and make partners with local government to address this problem, issue, or need?
Me, Rodolfo, and Kenya are doing this intersection here. It's traffic safety. And the problem is, on Irish Street, it's about 150 feet away. When that light turns red, cars get backed up all the way in front of this intersection. And now, when the cars get backed up all the way in front of the intersection, cars coming from Darwell here cannot make any turns that way or any turns that way. Same thing if cars are trying to turn in Darwell. And here's an example.
Now let's check out an example when someone's trying to turn with that traffic on. Imagine how that guy felt. Well, let's see it. Wow, I hope that guy is patient. Now here's another issue. When cars coming out of Darwell, they want to make a left turn on Irish Street. So from here, they're going to have to come across 3 entire lanes so that they're able to make a left turn on Irish Street. Now imagine that with traffic blocking here when this light is red. You don't even have to imagine that. I'll show you. We gotta stop this. So this is what we did.
Hey, my name's Anthony Elbridge, and I'm trying to start a petition right here on this intersection here, Darwell and Florence. There's been many car collisions happening there, and I'm trying to place a key clear zone so that every car coming out of Darwell or coming in Darwell can turn safely. And with your signature, it really helped.
Sure. Yeah, I've experienced some problems there before myself coming home from work. So I just have to sign right here?
Yes.
Okay, here you go.
Okay, thanks.
Well, good luck. Good luck. Thank you.
Now that petition there was to add a keep clear zone so that cars can turn like this.
Hello, this is City Hall, Daniel Crystal speaking.
Yes, I'm calling about a traffic safety concern.
Okay, I'm going to have the assistant city manager call you to help guide you.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay.
Hey, this is John Ortega. I heard from Crespo you have traffic safety concerns.
Yes, I do. On Darwell and Florence, there's a light 150 feet away from it, And when that light turns red, cars get backed up all the way in front of Darwell. And the whole intersection is blocked and cars are not able to turn in and out of Darwell. And I started a petition to add a keep clear zone, and I got 45 people to sign and agreed with me.
Okay, can you write a letter to public worker explaining that problem? And I'll make sure that they investigate it.
Okay, all right, well, thank you.
Now all we gotta do is wait for a response.
Anybody, what was a problem or issue Anthony focused on, his project focused on? You could do it audibly or you can post a comment.
Greg, we have in the chat room, Nora says that traffic light causing cars to get backed up.
Absolutely. And what was really great is Anthony actually, I don't know if I would necessarily recommend this, but actually Anthony demonstrated exactly what the danger was or why it was important for him or his community to actually get that keep clear zone. What are some examples of specific civic actions that Anthony completed in order to develop and move his effort forward?
Lorraine has chimed in the chat with a petition.
Absolutely, did a petition. And that can be pretty intimidating for people. I mean, he actually went door to door.
Yeah,
These
Sarah
days,
just said that door to door.
Yeah, a lot of people would just do this online now, which makes it even easier. Get a lot more responses if you could just promote it through social media or something. Anything else? What were some other civic actions that he completed?
Called the city. It involved public works.
Absolutely, he engaged local government. He figured out who was responsible for addressing this particular problem, issue, or need. So what was a policy connection, or was there a policy connection? Was it obvious, or was it something maybe not so obvious?
That he was able to get the sign painted for traffic safety purpose?
It turns out that there is an internal policy. They have a budget in the public works, and there is an internal policy whereby they do respond to public feedback regarding where they need some of these, for instance, keep clear zones actually installed. So just so I get the story right, Patty, correct me. I believe this picture right now, you can see the look on Anthony's face. He took all the steps, completed the project. I believe it was sort of the last week of school or the last couple of weeks of school. And he was in class. He didn't necessarily expect, because this is something that a lot of young people, they don't expect to get response. He gets a phone call from his mother telling him, I think they're painting that keep clear zone on the corner. So he shows up, and this is a picture of Anthony looking at the result of his efforts.
That's correct. I think, Anthony was so dedicated to this, and he would keep asking throughout the project what it was, what else he could do, because he when between the time that the project ended and they painted that, he wanted to continue monitoring the progress that they were making towards this painting the keep clear zone. I think it's important to kind of mention that the thing that I love the most is that Anthony was an RSP student. So he was classified as a special ed student, and he was put in my classroom as a collaborative setting. And out of the 4 members of his group, 2 were RSP, 1 was an ELD, and 1 was an emerging EL. So I really was proud of this group, but Anthony by far is the one that took the lead and kind of was dragging everybody along to get this done. So that I really enjoyed watching him flourish on the leadership role.
CAP is used with a wide range of students. We've used it with advanced placement students. We've used it with traditional students or students with special needs or learning disabilities. And Anthony's instincts, again, throughout this entire, even just choosing an issue that was really accessible and local, really made it possible. He really optimized the possibility that he was actually going to actually solve this issue, which I want to warn everybody. That is not the goal of the CAP project. For instance, if a student suddenly decides to address homelessness, it's important to mention to the student that they are not going to solve homelessness in 6 weeks. But what they will be able to do is become informed and experts on the impact of that issue in their community and who the policymakers are, who the groups and organizations are that are already dedicated to addressing that issue. That's really the ideal outcome of the CAP process, that students become experts on the issue that they already decided was important. In Anthony's case, he actually was able to close the loop and actually get resolution on this issue. And that can happen as well. Civic Action Project is web-based, it's standards aligned, all of the lessons we've aligned to the standards, 12th grade government standards. Student voice, extremely important to let the students choose the issue that they think is important because that's where the buy-in goes. Policy-based. We really want students to get to that policy connection, whether there even is a policy connection, and consider why policy is important. Does it need to be revised? Does it need to be enforced? Does a new policy need to be created? These are the options we want students to consider because policy is really the key to sustainable change, as opposed to them doing a project every week or every month or every year. As I tell students, policy determines how the money is spent in your community. So you got to find out what the policy is and who's in charge and how do you influence their decisions. And I want to very briefly touch upon this topic of citizenship, which is a privilege that we all appreciate, but sometimes it's also a term that can be controversial and even intimidating to others. So it's really important that we let students know what is the context of citizenship that we're referring to. So if I were to ask any of you, can any of you maybe share an example of an individual throughout world, national, or even local or personal history that you believe was an effective or engaged and informed citizen? Somebody who affected positive change, just like Anthony did, on the local or even macro level. What are some examples of individuals throughout history or even your personal experience that you believe would qualify as being effective citizens?
Cesar Chavez.
Absolutely, and Cesar Chavez. And who actually mentioned Cesar Chavez? So I can ask him really quick.
Patricia.
Okay, but so Patricia, what specific trait or personal characteristic made him so effective?
The fact that
Just
he engaged in policy and wanting to change policy.
Absolutely.
As far as, yeah.
He engaged policy and policymakers. That's what made him so effective. And it took a long time. It wasn't something that happened in a week or a year or even, I think, 10 years. I think that strike lasted. It lasted for a long time. So
Greg, and Nora followed up with her comment that taking the time to educate themselves on the issues.
Absolutely. That's what makes a voter powerful, right? If they take the time to educate themselves on the issue, that's something that CAP does for students. It compels them to really become informed about an issue that they themselves thought was important to address. And we're going to have 4 separate categories. And they're the categories that I mentioned at the beginning of the workshop. What are the knowledge, skills, actions, and attitudes that individuals need to complete or learn or even practice or share in order for them to be effective? And think about Chavez, Gandhi, and voters. So the prompt is, what do effective citizens need to know? And we have one example, how laws are. Yes, what level of government is the problem? Absolutely. Is it local? Is it state? Is it national? Rights and responsibilities of citizenship? Absolutely. And specifically, what are those rights and responsibilities? The means of communication? Absolutely. Especially these days. Young people, they really internet savvy. They know how to leverage social media to get the word out. Excellent. Yes, proper formatting of letters, petitions. Absolutely. Which is interesting because I think this will actually overlaps with the next prompt. Impacts of laws such as money, people, property. Absolutely. Who are the decision makers? That's where it all starts. Who's responsible? Who's making these decisions? So what skills does an effective citizen need? Speaking skills, absolutely. What are some other skills an individual needs in order to be effective? Think of some very basic skills. We have speaking. There are different forms of communication. Technology, absolutely. Being tech savvy, especially these days. As I mentioned earlier, being able to leverage social media in order to get the word out. Where to find statistics to support? Yes, absolutely. Research skills, writing skills, absolutely. There was a skill that Cesar Chavez was really, I think, really made him effective, and it hasn't been mentioned. He had one particularly important skill. Public speaking, absolutely. Martin Luther King's speeches are 60, 70 years old, and they're still moving people, and they're still relevant. Great orator, being clear and persuasive, absolutely. Not only to those allies, but even to the opposition. One thing I want to point out is we always tell students the CAP process isn't an adversarial process. It's about communicating and finding partners. Attitudes. What type of attitudes does an effective citizen need? Belief that one person can make a difference is one example. Think of the patience, absolutely. That's what Anthony, I think, really, Anthony got patience and perseverance, resilience. He did everything. His instincts were really right on. Any other, what kind of attitude did Cesar Chavez, MLK, or Gandhi have? Building on work that has already been done, absolutely. Open to new ideas, old ideas. Empathy, absolutely. That was something that people like Cesar Chavez, Gandhi, and MLK had. They walked miles in the shoes of the community they were representing. They spoke compassion, absolutely. Being positive and optimistic, absolutely, another great. Here we go. What actions does an effective citizen need to take? We already mentioned voting. What other specific actions? Create partnerships, absolutely. Not an adversarial process. It's about finding out who your partners are and how you can optimize, yes, communication with policymakers. Once again, extremely important. Petition writing, collecting signatures, absolutely. That's how Anthony was able to really quantify how important the issue was by being able to get the signatures of a bunch of people. What was it? I think 40-something signatures on his block. That was a compelling way to persuade the public works that it was a real issue and need. This is the profile of effective citizenship that we want students to really work in. This is the context we want to start out with. That was essentially the first lesson of the CAP curriculum, which we're going to start looking at the other lessons right now. But what's really important about this process, students have defined citizenship based on their values and their priorities. Therefore, the profile that they're going to fulfill, the profile that they're going to practice is one that's important to them. They've now created, just through this 40-minute activity, they've now defined citizenship in a way that it means something to them. It's a personal definition, and this is what you let them know they're going to be practicing over the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or whatever it is they time they devote to the CAP process. Practicing how to become informed and effective citizens who are able to influence the decisions of the decision makers. So what we essentially did very quickly, that was the very first CAP lesson, a different type of government course. Here we go, we're on the website. So if you log in, you can register right here at the top right corner. And this is what the CAP website looks like. We have different categories of curriculum, but for today's session, we're just going to focus on the traditional CAP lessons. But you can see we have different ones. We have CAP for AP and we have CAP Online, something we worked on during the lockdown. But let's go to the CAP lessons very quickly. 5 lessons are the core lessons. These are the lessons that provide students with the foundation to actually start developing their CAP projects. We already did the first one very quickly, and this is what the CAP lessons look like. Each lesson has an overview, the state standards that it's been aligned with, common core state standards, and the civic mission of schools proven practices. So like if you clicked here, you would see these are the proven practices that have been identified in this report as being as the elements of a quality civic education for students. So back to the lesson plan. Each lesson plan has the objectives, essentially what the students are expected to do, a list of preparation and materials, all of them downloadable from the CAP website, step-by-step procedure for how to deliver the lesson. Each lesson is designed to be completed in a 45-minute session. On the left-hand column, you'll see a video, and this is actually a video of Eddie's former colleague at Roosevelt, Carlos, doing the citizenship brainstorm in his classroom. So if you want to see how the lesson looks being delivered in the classroom, you can watch it here. And additional supplemental reading, if for some reason there's a topic on the CAP lesson that you feel you'd want students to take a deeper dive on, you'll find additional supplemental reading on that topic. The next one is an introduction to public policy. And this one, the students do get an introduction to public policy, and they do a media search where they go to different news sites and find examples of problems, issues, or needs being addressed in policy. Then they do a policy analysis, how effective a policy is, how they might want to change it, etc. This is the critical threshold, the problem, policy, and civic actions. This is where the students take maybe a macro issue like homelessness and identify a single cause or effect that they want to focus on to address it. For instance, the lack of mental health services in our community. So then their civic action issue statement would be, we are going to address the issue of homelessness by focusing on the lack of mental health services in our community. Now they have a concrete objective, and they have accessible individuals that they can actually try to engage and influence with their research and their feedback. The next lesson is introducing policy analysis. And what we do, we have case studies right here, where once again, these are real life stories from all over the country, specific issues, problems, or needs being addressed through policy. And once again, the students look at how effective these policies are in terms of addressing the issues that are being focused on in these readings. Once again, additional readings in a video over on the right. Then we have policy making in the 3 branches of government. This is a really interesting lesson. We have 2 different options. We have one that's a traditional lesson. Then we have one done in the civil conversation, which is a different method for having students discuss controversial issues. This particular lesson had to do with illustrates how the different branches of government interacted to draft a policy, enforce the policy, ultimately rescind the policy based on constitutional restrictions, or it was deemed as being violating civil rights of individuals. And this was the Chicago gang ordinance, which actually was then revised and then implemented afterwards. But it shows students how the different branches of government interact to address a problem or issue. We have supplemental lessons. We have the Civic Actions survey. That's the lesson that essentially helps students create their own survey, public opinion poll. All of these other lesson topics, these are standalone. The first 5 are developmental. Really, the first 3 is all you need to get the students started. All of the other balance of the other lessons are standalone. So if there's you could teach these based on at your discretion or student interest. If there's something here you think the students will benefit from, feel free to use it. I don't know, Patty, if there's any way you might want to comment on maybe some lessons that you actually use or you find very effective, or a sequence of lessons that you use.
I think I've used building constituencies and the persuading one, just because especially the persuading, it ties really nicely into their expository writing class, and getting like a mission out there, and then going ahead and using tools of logos, pathos, and I think it's egos to go ahead and kind of persuade somebody to do the right thing. So I like those 2 lessons a lot, to augment the original 5.
So we have CAP planners. There are 4 different CAP planners. A proposal, this is where the students essentially explain what the issue is and what it is, why they think it's important. What's really important about the planners is that the planners allow you, the teacher, to keep track, monitor student progress. And the planners are essentially just a series of prompts that the students complete throughout the process. Maybe once a week they complete a planner. It allows you as a teacher to monitor their progress, but really important, it enables the students to document every step of their development of their project. Extremely important. I always tell students, if it isn't written down, it's almost as if it didn't happen. Give yourselves as much credit as you can. Document every step of the process. Those things are really great. I think we've seen, especially for students, if they're juniors doing CAP, for their college applications. All of the college applications ask for evidence of the community engagement. This exceeds a lot of the other examples that students. Anthony's video alone, I think, would exceed what other examples. He's not volunteering. He dug into a specific issue and really engaged local government to address it. So that's how the planners work. We have some others, a student action page, examples of completed student projects. When I introduce CAP to students, this is essentially where I start. Essentially the little activity that I did earlier where you watch the video and point out those little elements, just so they can see that there's a variety of projects that students have already completed and they could use this sort of as a template to develop their own project. We also have a toolkit. They're tip sheets and essentially helping students create a PSA in this example. If you click on these, you have different examples. Opinion polls and surveys. Once again, a tip sheet on how to create opinion polls and surveys. This has a lot of graphics, so it's a little longer, but it's actually probably just 1 or 1.5 pages. Extremely important, once again, measuring the concern and the importance of their issue in their community. I would think this is a great first civic action just to get them started because they're becoming informed. So it's a great way to start, get the ball rolling. Based on the feedback, it usually gives them lots of stuff to do next. So this is the toolkit. You click on all of them. Once again, all of them have different single-page tip sheet that you can refer the students to continue developing their project. Or in other words, when a student asks you what you should do, what they should do next, refer them to the toolkit and ask them whether there's something here they might want to apply to their project. We don't want the teachers to coordinate the project. They're simply coaches and sounding boards, giving them advice and then letting them develop the project on their own. Really, the teacher just makes sure that they're maintaining effort every week, check in, maybe with the planners, just to make sure that they're making progress. Dave, you want to talk about the contest?
This is something that we offer to students who are going through the CAP experience. We want to highlight what students are doing across the nation. So we put together a contest that does have monetary value to it. So students do win awards for their creativity. Basically, this product that we do get from students can be either be a PowerPoint, a video similar to what we saw earlier in Anthony's, and that was actually one of the a contest entry. There's also social media. A lot of students will do stories through social media. So basically, they'll have an entry and they'll just tell us about what policy they chose to work on in their community and what were some of the actions that students took on that issue. So all these entries, we collect them. We have a CYB, which Greg will tell you about, which is our youth board. And the youth board is integral to kind of helping other students along the process. So they serve as coaches for students. They're just students that have gone through CAP and that wanted to do just a little bit extra and be a little bit more involved and help other students along the way. Patty can also tell you her students have done very well in past entries and have actually won many of the contests. So this is just, great sounding board for your students to get, their issues and their creativity shared across the CAP community, across the nation. And we host these contests twice a semester. So your students will definitely have the opportunity to participate.
So once again, you go back to the dashboard. Once again, here are all of the resources you need in order to implement CAP in your classroom. And really these top ones, the lessons and all of these other resources, that's the very essential CAP, but you have other examples to look at and other resources as well. The planner's project proposal, thinking it through, the proposal lets you teachers know what it is that the students plan to work on, thinking it through, maybe their initial research. They decide they want to shift gears, maybe a different cause or effect. Civic Actions, this is essentially the same planner that you might want to ask students to complete separate times to pretty much document their previous week progress, and the project report, which is a reflection exercise. I also think it's a great baton, especially if it's a macro issue like climate change or homelessness or drug abuse, so those big macro issues. It's a great baton to pass on to the next group of students that might invariably choose the same project, pick up where the students left off. But this is also a really great way for the teacher because it lets you know where the students are, where their progress, where they've been, what they've actually done, where do they want to be, where they headed, and finally reflect on the entire experience was extremely important. We want them to capture that experience and really attribute meaning to it. Take that civic experience and really put some meaning to it in their personal lives. And once again, I always tell the students, working in groups, meeting deadlines, and producing a product, that's what adults get paid for. And I think that's really important for especially seniors to realize, because this is not just a classroom assignment. It's not for a grade. It's really their professional development. This is really going to help them transition into college and promote their success in college, career, and civic life. Because working in groups, meeting deadlines, and having a product at the end, that's what adults get paid for. That's what we get paid for on an almost daily basis. I'm sure all of you are in the same boat. So it's really important for students to know. The other thing I remind them, you need a network to get work. Just through the process of completing their CAP project, they're going to be networking with like-minded individuals and other organizations and local policymakers. I know in Bell Gardens, I know some students have actually gotten internships in local government as a result of their initial engagement through CAP. So once again, it's a great way to transition seniors into young adults. This is the highlight. Drum roll, please. Here we go. We're very lucky to have Patty with us today. Patty knows this project inside out. She's actually developed resources that we have posted on the website.
Well, first and foremost, I think everybody take a deep breath. I know sometimes when we're coming back to the grind of training and about to start the school year that we kind of get overwhelmed. So a deep breath, clean breath sometimes helps. Now, the thing I like, and first and foremost, let's talk about how I introduce the Civic Action Project to my students. The initial reaction sometimes is when you hear project and you have to go outside into the community and talk to the community. For my students, it does feel like an overwhelming experience because it's so unique to government class and civics, just because they're not used to dealing with the outside public. They're so used to dealing with each other and the school and maybe having a product at the end of it. And there you go, right? So the very first thing I do, I need to make sure that I always put the Civic Action Project in my syllabus. And I put it as a unit, but I also put that it's an ongoing unit. So I go ahead and say it's either going to be at the beginning, and it kind of leads into the second question, right? Like, how is it that I implement CAP in my classroom? So I've tried it different ways to try to figure out how it is that it's going to fit in my class for that particular year. Or I say, well, I tried it like this, but I noticed a couple of things here and there that I need to change. And CAP allows you to do that. I think that's what I like. There's no right or wrong way of producing CAP in your classroom. It's what fits you as a teacher, what fits your population of students. It is what you feel comfortable with. So I really like that. I've tried it at the beginning, right? Like, and kind of just to kind of clarify a couple of things. The 5 lessons that you teach your students are the foundation for what they're going to do afterwards. Okay, so it would be hard for us to go ahead and throw the students off the deep end and say, okay, you're going to work on this project and you're going to go ahead and influence policy, right? So the 5 lessons are meant to be an introduction, to do the report, to do the actions, to do the reflection. Okay, now the 5 lessons that are the foundation for this project are the ones that I experiment on the placing of. The 5 lessons that you teach at the beginning, right? I've done it as a unit on its own, the 2nd, 3rd week of school, just because it's a nice warm up to what the course is. For a lot of us, when they come in, sometimes they go, oh, I hate history, or I've hated history, I've done horrible in it, and blah, 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 right? My thing always at the beginning is like, well, you're lucky because this is not a history course, right? It's a social science, but it's not a history course. And this is a living subject. This is something that you're gonna have to, I'm gonna ask you your opinion. You're gonna have to figure out where you stand on certain issues. So the 5 lessons, I've done it as an introductory to go ahead and get them warmed up to what the curriculum will be for the next semester, right? I've also tried the 5 lessons and splitting them up to fit within the units that I already have. So for example, that first one of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and actions, I go ahead and put that at the beginning as an introductory, but then when we talk about policy and media, I go ahead and put those in those units. And then by the end of it, I already covered the 5 lessons where they fit in my pacing. And then the last unit is just heavy work on what their project's gonna be, right? The third choice that I've also practiced is, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and use the 5 lessons at the midpoint. So I already went ahead and did the political philosophers, I already went ahead and did federalism, I already went and did the Constitution, right? And founding documents. Now in the middle, I'm gonna go ahead and teach these 5 lessons, right? And that way the 2nd quarter or the 4th quarter, they're working on ongoing basis on their reports and on their actions and on their reflection, okay? So those are the 3 that I've done. To tell you the truth, I like all 3 ways. It depends how chaotic that year is gonna be. So I've practiced, and we're like in Bell Gardens High School, this is our 2nd year with our principal, right? It's going to be the 1st year on campus with our new principal. So sometimes I like to feel out the support even within the school, because sometimes our students want to go after school policies, right? Sometimes I want to get a feel with what leadership is looking like. both at the district, both at with a principal, and then I go ahead and choose one of those three choices. Or sometimes maybe I think, you know what, let me navigate this a little bit better. Okay, that's what CRF allows you to do. It allows you to go ahead and even talk about what transitions and what methods to use depending on the leadership that is there.
How much time do you devote to the CAP process in any given semester? That's a semester, a year?
For me, because I do government per semester, right? It's my first semester class, so I go ahead and do it for first semester. Back in the day when we used to switch off, and I think some of our schools do the switch still. I keep my students for the entire year, so I do government and civics and the Civic Action project for that semester, and then I transition over to economics. When I was doing AP curriculum, because I had them for the entire year, I would do this kind of goes in as a capstone project that we have to do under AP. So I would go ahead and use CAP with my AP students to go ahead and develop a project. And I would go ahead and introduce it in December. So that way they would have the winter break to kind of do those conversations and do those actions. And then it would be doing in February. So that way we could kind of, and I know I would leak into my econ, but it would be a nice leak into economics curriculum.
You highlighted 3 different ways of how you've implemented CAP in the past, and those implementations came as you used CAP more and more, and you realized different ways that would work better with your students and your population. But what would you recommend a teacher going into CAP, implementing CAP for the first time?
Yeah, for the first time, I really recommend that use it as a warm-up at the beginning of the year. For me personally, that was at the beginning the best way, because again, you get the students into the different mindset, and you're also becoming familiar with the curriculum, right? And again, I want to kind of re-emphasize, remember that the 5 lessons are the foundation for what they're going to do forward. So like going ahead and pinpointing, okay, what did this individual do? Like, especially like in the case studies, right? What did they do to get this change, or what was done to, and having those conversations with the students to get them into that frame of mind, right? So I think if you're going to start this for the very first time, I like the first choice where you kind of do week 2 or week 3 being those 5 lessons, right? And then going ahead and, because lesson 3 talks about the proposal. What is it that you might want to work on? And to tell you the truth, sometimes I move that around. Like if I notice that after lesson 2, I kind of might need to do the case studies before I do the proposal, I'll go ahead and switch those 2. Does that make sense? But again, I've been doing CAP for 10 years now. So I know more or less like when it is that I do need to do that flip, or if I could just do the 5 lessons in a row. Any other questions? Okay, so the next part is, I know that in our PLCs, especially as teachers, sometimes they ask us to develop lessons or to go ahead and pick a standard or a skill from the Common Core. I'm going to be honest, I cheat. I use a lot of the lessons from CAP to be the common lessons that we do as a department in the whole history social sciences, specifically with my PLC, because my PLC is civics based. So because every single thing within CAP is aligned to the Common Core and aligned to our subject matter standards, it is very easy to go ahead and say, okay, let me get the lesson printed out. All right, here are the standards, here are the skills, this is the practice, this is the lesson. It is really easy just to plug in the things that we need to plug in. They also have the rubrics, so you don't have to develop rubrics for these things. The rubrics are already in place, so that way you can just go ahead and line it up. And again, as teachers, I know for a fact that we go, okay, we don't need a printed rubric. We know what a good one looks like and what a okay one looks like and what a bad one looks like. I understand. But sometimes when we have parents coming in or students coming in, why did I get this grade? The rubric really kind of helps us outline exactly where their faults were or where they were really excelled. Does that make sense? So Again, the rubrics are there for a tool. It's not mandatory that you use the rubrics. I like the rubrics again because I could use them again in my PLC. I do like the fact that after I'm done with the 5 lessons, right, that I'm able to go ahead and get these kids on the website, or even if I know that introducing yet another platform to my students is going to be overwhelming, I go ahead and get those PDFs and drop them into my Google Classroom, and have them with the dates that I would like them submitted, right? But at the end of the day, I also put a link on my Google Classroom for the youth board that they talked about, where they could go ahead and it's a discussion post format. So like, let's say I am a student in my class and I'm struggling to get this project completed, or I don't know what next steps I could take, but I don't want to talk to the teacher because what if she's judging me? I could always go to the youth board and say, hey, this is my project. I'm stuck here. What do you guys think? And it's a bunch of kids, well, I call them kids, right? Because they're all kids to us, right? But these are kids that already went through the project themselves and could go ahead and guide your students without you being there for them every single step of the way if they kind of don't want to bother you with it. Half the time, they're going to come up to you and ask you anyway, but the youth board is a nice segue for them to go ahead and ask other people besides yourself what it is and where they're stuck. The toolkit, this is very unique, and I even use it myself, and I use it for other people in my department, right? The toolkit is so valuable. A lot of our students, I know when we were going through school, we had, and this sounds weird, I don't know if all of us did, but contemporary living and home economics, right? And they used to teach you how to write a letter, how to go ahead and be formal, how to go ahead and write a perfect resume. Like, they used to show you these skills. We don't have any classes like that in place anymore, right? And sometimes we depend on other subject areas to get this done. But at the end of the day, I think it's very valuable that they have this toolkit that the kids that don't know how to do a petition, you could just go ahead and say, this is how you do a petition, just go on here, there you go, right? Without you having to hand hold or find things that kind of look like a petition and give it. They could go ahead and take the toolkit and run with it, and they could look up anything that they like. If you ever have a doubt, this is why I love CRF. They're a phone call away, and they're not going to judge you. And if you send an email, you're probably by the end of the day going to have a response. They're very, very personable. They're very, very they embrace the teacher experience and what you're going through and what you have to deliver. So that's what I like about CRF a lot, and why I've stuck around for more than 10 years working with them is because of the relationships you build with the people working at CRF, but also the support that you're receiving. You don't feel like you're being thrown into the deep end and hopefully you're able to survive. No, they're going to be there.
How do you assess their work, Patty? And really, what are your expectations? That's the other thing. What are the expectations for students? I always want to make, you're not going to solve climate change in a semester. So what are the expectations for students? Perfect.
Yeah. Again, we have the rubrics from CRF. And at the end of the 5 lessons, I kind of like to do a little quiz that say, go ahead and which ones of these are knowledge, which ones of these are action, petitions, skills and attitudes. I also like to do the case studies, like tell me about your case study to assess how much information they were able to retain. So I do a little assessment at the end of the 5 lessons. And I think CRF has that quiz on their website. But if anybody here, I'll put my email at the end of on the chat in case you wanted some of those things. But that's how I assess the 5 lessons. At the end, when I do the project, again, like Greg said, I go, look, I'm not grading you on whether you got it done. I'm grading you on the experience of you trying to get this goal accomplished, right? So did you make an honest attempt at changing this? Did you record and document the actions that you took? So I'm grading you on the documentation of the actions. I care less whether you did it or not. It'd be great if you do, but I just want to make sure that you know how to do the actions required to make this type of change, right? So I'm grading on the steps per se, but not the actual end result. And again, every single one of those has a rubric on it. And I don't know if you could display that for them, Greg, if possible. Maybe you could find it on the website, but each form has a rubric that is Common Core aligned, that is skills based. Okay. Again, every single thing is subject matter and Common Core standard aligned. So that's how you could assess the report. Okay. I also, like, again, with the grading. Okay. I've done it several ways over the course of 10 years. One is as the due dates come along, I'll go ahead and say, okay, turn this form in and I'll grade it at that point in time. The other way that I've done it is I collect, I'd say these are your milestones. So these are the dates that you should be getting this stuff done. But I'm going to grade you on the final report, what you're going to go ahead and turn in. And then grade it as an entire report versus individual pieces of that report. Okay, so it's up to you how you want to go ahead and assess that. Sometimes I've done 50% of the report goes on the actual documentation that you show, and the other 50% is on the presentation you're going to give to the class as to what actions you took and what and the video and the visuals, the multimedia that you showed to go ahead and prove that you did this project.
So here are some examples of some of the assessment tools, rubrics that we have. Patty's created several of these, as well as other CAP teachers. We have a very simple rubric that we developed, and we're essentially just measuring what they've learned in terms of standards-based content, and then some of the skills that they may have learned, just to really document, really, as Patty said, what is it that they've learned through the process? It's really a discipline. We like to call this a practicum for government, because we really want students to practice what it's like to try to influence, or at least find out what are the necessary steps in order to get things done.
So this is what I'm talking about, the rubrics, as far as how well is it that our students are performing to the Common Core standards, and going ahead and attaching this to any one of those forms that they go ahead and submit. Yes, so this is and that's what I mean by, like, it's a really simplified way of grading it, just because it helps us as teachers tell them why this wasn't an A. And I know a lot of our students go, hey, I did it, why didn't I get an A? It's like, wait a second. A is for excellent. Let's go ahead and talk about why it's not an A. Right? So the rubric actually does help with explaining to each of the students why each form did not receive maybe the highest of the grades, or why it did receive a high grade, right? Again, the CRF website has them, but if you want those directly from me, I'm a big believer in to-do lists and checklists and organization, right? So sometimes our students struggle with, okay, how do I organize this whole thing? So I have a group information form. So if they're going to go ahead and they're going to work outside of class, I have a form not only for them, but for me, where it says the cell phone numbers, the emails for those students, how to go ahead and get a hold of each other. So each of them gets a copy of that group information, but I also get it as well. Because there's times that, like, let's say the day of the presentation, 3 out of the 4 show up and they're wondering where the 4th is. And we're able to text the 4th person why they're not there. Okay. The project folder checklist, it's making sure that every step of the way they have documentation for it. So it's a checkoff list. The peer group evaluation form. I always tell them, I know how unfair sometimes it is when you're working in a group that you're doing all the work and one person's not doing anything and you feel like it's not fair. The peer evaluation form asks them to go ahead and list every member of the group and to say how they went ahead and contributed to the group. And then at the end, it's, what would you give them if you were me? What grade would you give that person? And you'd be amazed how honest those people are, because I tell them that those are completely confidential. They get turned in directly to me and I keep them. They're not to be shared with anybody. And then again, the group evaluation form, that's the one that I use to grade the group overall, how well they did in that report and on their multimedia presentation. And last but not least, the written report rubric, how did they do with the entire program, with the entire proposal? That is what they go ahead and turn into me. At the end, I also give them like a calendar type as to milestones, the dates that they should have. So sometimes I do a calendar and I give them a calendar with the dates, or I also go ahead and give them a to-do list with where they should be with each of those forms during the semester.
Everything you just said really illustrates one of the primary benefits or really outcomes. What CAP is really designed to do is to translate classroom content into application in real life for the student. How do you make it relevant? All of the skills, even having to deal with people who are slacking, and guess what? That's a real life experience. It's something that, and that's how they have to learn how to be flexible. How do they have to learn to be innovative? And it compels them. That's what something the CAP experience does, help students do. It helps them practice being flexible. It helps them practice being resilient. You know, their job isn't on the line. They're not going to be fired for being students. They will get credit though for taking that step and actually trying to work around some of these setbacks and challenges. So thanks a lot, Patty. I mean, this is exactly why we have you. You bring it exactly what it actually looks like in real life. And this is what we want it to be for students. And all of this really prepares students for what many of you might have already heard of, the California State Seal of Civic Engagement. As many of you know, the California Department of Ed has created a civic seal that will placed on the diplomas of graduating students who have demonstrated excellence in civics education and participation and understanding of the U.S. Constitution, the California Constitution, and the democratic system of government. CAP definitely hits on 3, 4, 5 of that criteria. But just in case, we created additional resource page on the CRF website. And what we've done is we aligned CRF resources. We've been around for more than 50 years, people. We have a real catalog of all types of resources that we've developed. We have writers on staff. So what we've done, you see this criteria for the State Seal of Civic Engagement: be engaged in academic work in a productive way, demonstrate a common understanding of U.S. and California Constitution, functions of local government, tribal government, et cetera, et cetera. What we've done is, if you click here, we've essentially collected all of the resources that CRF has that addresses those criteria items. And we've broken it down by grade level and subject area. So please, I would encourage all of you to check out this page at your earliest convenience, just to see some of the different resources that CRF has. We tried not to make it exhaustive, but guess what? We have literally hundreds of resources that we had to go through to create this page. I like to say we always give teachers more than they need, and then they can pick what it is that's useful for them, and that's fine with us. We have different links to the California Department of Ed page if you want more information on how they describe it, the LA County as well. And of course, we have contact information for individuals you might want to contact. If there's any problem with this page, any problem with any of the resources, contact us and we'll facilitate your ability to be able to access them and implement them. We're always available, especially now we've all become very proficient with remote and online PD. Just to recap, pun intended, all you have to really do with CAP is once you register on the website, you'll get instructions on how to get your username and password within 24 hours. You'll then be able to upload it. If you register your student roster, your students will get access to all of those student features or website features or website tools that we've designed to help them develop their civic action projects. And if you need any help, I'll deliver the first 5 lessons, use the planners. That is essentially CAP. Thank you very much, Patty. I really appreciate it. You always make it very real for us. Fill in any of those gaps because you're right there in the classroom. All of you can count on myself and David, particularly David. He has a really long and deep history with Bell Gardens. So he could definitely, and MUSD, so he can really facilitate any connections or extra support that you need.